Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good weekend, or if you're watching this on Monday as Monday's episode of Mingles with Jingles, I hope you all had a good weekend. Thank you to everybody who's turned up in person here in the Salt Mine Discord Q&A for March. Yes, I forgot what month it was because I'm crap. And of course, if you're watching this as Monday's episode of Mingles with Jingles, then welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. First things first though, got to pay the bills. This week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, sponsored by NordPass. Today's video is, once again, I'm very happy to announce, sponsored by NordPass, the intuitive password manager. As always, you can head over to nordpass.com/jingles and use code JINGLES to get access to their current best offer, all covered by their, no questions asked, 30-day money-back guarantee. And what I wanted to talk about today is kind of related to that. Although the situation I'm about to describe was 100% entirely my own dumbass fault and is never going to happen to you unless you're messing around with the business and personal versions of NordPass at the same time and somehow managing to find a way to screw up both. Cut a long story short, I ended up locking myself out of NordPass. So I had to get in touch with support@nordpass.com, and they have the best customer support teams I have ever encountered. I contacted them and raised a support ticket on Sunday evening, and the whole issue was resolved by Monday lunchtime. Part of the process involved exporting all of my passwords. They had to unlock the account for me so I could go in there and save everything and then lock it all down again once I'd done that in order to work their tech support magic. And I'm going to show you just how simple the whole process is, which should also hopefully reassure anybody who has some concerns about that 30-day no questions asked money back guarantee. Because one of the questions that I have seen, which might have been putting people off trying NordPass in the first place, is what happens at the end of that 30-day money back guarantee period if you decide you want your money back. Although I'm positive that if you try it you will like it, but the potential that people might end up being locked out of their passwords at the end of the 30-day trial period if they ask for a refund has understandably been putting some of you off. Well, I'm happy to address your concerns here, because it's the same simple process that I had to undergo in order to save and retrieve all of my password information while the support team unscrewed whatever it was that I had done to screw up both of my NordPass accounts. You just log into the NordPass app, you click the settings button up here, then you scroll down to the import and export section, you click export items. It will ask you to input your master password just as an additional security check, and once you've done that it'll ask you where you want to save all of your passwords. Typically this is going to be in your documents folder, and it will generate a spreadsheet file for you that contains all of your passwords and all of your login credentials. So if for some reason, although I'm sure you won't, you decide not to subscribe to NordPass, at the end of that 30-day period, as long as you do this, all of your passwords are safe. So you lose nothing by just giving it a try. And you can do that by heading over to nordpass.com/jingles and using code JINGLES in order to get access to their latest, best exclusive offer and take advantage of that 30-day, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. Right, thank you once again to NordPass for sponsoring me yet again. And we're going to crack on with, first an update, and then we'll crack on with the questions. So, there's no real news. Things move very, very slowly, unfortunately. So, as I mentioned in last week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, I was diagnosed. I went to the doctor because, well, this is a complicated story. I went to the doctor because I noticed blood in my shit, which is not normal, it shouldn't be there. Now, I was a bad boy and I did the traditional old man thing and thought, it'll be fine, it'll clear up, it's probably just a hemorrhoid. And then after a month and it hadn't cleared up, I thought I should probably get a doctor to check this out. So that's the reason why I went to the doctor in the first place. And I had to submit, I went in for a blood test, and that's where they found the diabetes, from the blood test. So that's all kinds of fun. The diabetes is... Here's the thing, I don't even know what kind of diabetes I've got. It's probably, judging by the symptoms, type 2 diabetes, which is fine, it's manageable. Make some lifestyle changes. I've already drastically cut down on the amount of sugar that I have. You know, Coke Zero doesn't taste that bad after a while. The trick is to drink it as cold as you can possibly get it, so you don't notice the taste. So no sugary drinks anymore. I've halved the amount of sugar that I put in my coffee, and you know, after a while, it's only been a week and a half. It just real Coke tastes kind of sickly now because I've gotten used to not having as much sugar, and I'm fine with just putting one sugar in coffee. After a while, it tastes normal. It's amazing how quickly your body can adapt to stuff. Of course, I have to cut down on stuff like carbohydrates as well, which means pasta. And, and I love pasta, but you know, if you got to do it, you got to do it. If I had to cut down on cheese, it'd be like, nah, fuck it, I'll just die. I'm not giving up cheese for anybody or anything. But the thing is, I mean, it's been a week and a half since I had this diagnosis, and I haven't been called back in to have further tests to determine what type of diabetes it is, or attend a diabetes clinic, or get advice on lifestyle management from a diabetes nurse. Nothing like that yet, so I need to chase that up. The other thing, though, of course, the bowel cancer, and I must stress, I feel fine. It's only really the diabetes symptoms that I'm feeling, which is basically just manifests itself as a dry mouth all the time, unless I take in lots of liquids. But as far as the bowel cancer is concerned, I mean, I feel fine. The only real thing is every now and then, like every time now I feel a twinge of anything in my stomach, I think, oh my God, it's the cancer, when actually, no, it's just a fart. So, but that's it. I have received a letter from the doctor said that he would arrange a colonoscopy with the local hospital, the Queen Alexandria's Hospital in Portsmouth. And I've received a letter from the hospital, not booking me in for a colonoscopy, but I've received a letter from the hospital letting me know that they're going to send me a letter when they've booked me in for a colonoscopy. So that's probably going to happen the next week and a half. The thing is, since I made the announcement, I've been hearing from a lot of very credible sources that there's no way a GP, you know, your doctor, should be able to diagnose bowel cancer. Because the three tests that I submitted, the blood test, the one that revealed the diabetes, a stool sample, and what they call a FIT kit test. And FIT just stands for fecal immunology test. Now, I gave a quick Google, and it is one of the first things used to screen you for bowel cancer. And when I went to see the doctor, let me just say, this guy didn't fill me with a huge amount of confidence. Because I walked in there to get the results of the three tests. And the doctor sat me down and he said, so what appears to be the problem? And I said, I was kind of hoping you could tell me that, because I'm here to get the results of a bunch of tests. He had no idea what I was in there for. So then he spent a couple of minutes actually reading my notes on his computer, which you'd kind of hope would be the sort of thing that he would do before he sat you down and asked you what you were there for. And that's when first he did the blood test. He said, oh, right, yeah, diabetes. Okay. Couldn't say what type of diabetes. To this day, I still don't know. Still need to find out. And I don't know if he saw anything in the stool sample, but then he said, and the FIT test is positive. And I said, so, bowel cancer. And he did not say no. He didn't say, no, it's too early to tell. He didn't say, we can't diagnose that until we send you for a colonoscopy. I'll get that booked. He did say I'll get a colonoscopy booked, but he didn't at any point when I said bowel cancer say to me, no, probably not, or we don't know yet. He said, indeed, I will need to refer you for a colonoscopy. Now, I don't know if he was just, you see, here's the thing, I don't want to get my hopes up, because at the moment I know nothing other than the FIT test was positive and I need to have a colonoscopy so they can actually look for cancer. But, I mean, I've been hearing from a lot of credible sources that the FIT test doesn't diagnose bowel cancer. It just tests for blood in your stool. And I already knew there was blood in my stool. That's the whole reason I went to the doctor in the first place. So I'm just kind of sitting here not really knowing anything, but hopefully maybe I might not actually have bowel cancer, because there could be any reason for blood in your stool. I mean, it's not hemorrhoids, but there could be an ulcer in my gut. There could be cancer. We just don't know. That's the whole problem. Don't know. And I don't know what to make of what happened when I went to the doctor's surgery, because I said bowel cancer. He didn't say no. So I'm just basically just waiting for the results of more tests. There's not going to be a weekly update because this stuff doesn't, I don't want to have every episode of Mingles with Jingles dominated by me talking about my, medical shit, because there's not going to be anything new to say every week. But as and when there is any developments, I will, of course, let everybody know. And can I just say thank you, by the way, to everybody, because of the outpouring of support. I mean, that episode with Mingles with Jingles, these things they normally only get about 30,000 views after a week. That thing had hit 100,000 views after 2 days. And there are thousands of comments and messages of support and emails that have been coming in. You didn't make me cry, right? but it was getting a bit smoky, and I may have had to wipe my eye every now and then. And this is also another one of the reasons why a lot of people were saying you should set up a GoFundMe to, pay for your bills and stuff. Well, first of all, I don't have any medical bills because socialist medicine here in the UK, you don't pay for anything. So there's that. And also, and this keeps going back to the same thing, I just don't know. I don't know what type of diabetes it is. I don't know for sure. I mean, even though the doctor never told me, no, you don't have cancer, but there's so many credible sources have been saying the doctor cannot diagnose that. That's why they need to send you for a colonoscopy. But I don't know for sure. I mean, I'm really hoping I don't, obviously. But maybe I don't actually have cancer. We'll find out when we get the colonoscopy. Maybe I do, and I'm kind of prepared for that, but I've caught it nice and early, and it's entirely treatable. They might just be able to remove it with a biopsy, or maybe it's worse. I don't know. And until I do know, what I don't want to do is what a lot of people have been suggesting. Jingles, set up a GoFundMe to cover all your bills. Because I don't know. It may be that I'm going to be fine. It may be that I'm not going to be fine, but I've got enough time to sort everything out for myself. So I don't want to fleece everybody of, your hard-earned money if I don't need it. So we're just going to wait and see, fingers crossed, and hopefully within a week or two, I'll have had the colonoscopy, and then I might have to wait another week for the result. I don't know. I just haven't got a clue. Apparently the colonoscopy itself isn't that bad because they give you a sedative. I mean, when I first went to see the doctor, I enjoyed the pleasure of him sticking his gloved finger up my arse and having a good root around to see if he could find anything. He didn't find anything. There are places in the world where you have to pay good money to get people to do that to you. But on the National Health Service, I got that privilege for free. I've completely forgotten where I was going with this because I'm old and crap. The point being, I don't know. And until I know more, I don't want to jump the gun on anything. So thank you very, very much to everybody for all your messages of support and your advice. But I don't want to do anything, financially irreversible, like setting up a GoFundMe to, help if I don't need it. And at the moment, I don't know if I'm going to need it. So thank you to everybody. But we're just going to put the brakes on until we actually know what we're dealing with. And with that out of the way, and hopefully I haven't taken up the entire video, let's crack on with the questions. So I'm popping over to the questions channel. Basement Jesus says, Dear Almighty Jingles, you have often mentioned being young and stupid. Now that you're a middle-aged man, does this mean you're old and intelligent or something else? Yeah, that implies that you actually learn from your experiences, though, Basement Jesus, and I can't say that I have. I mean, you've all watched my videos. I'm as incompetent as... Let's just say it takes a while. I mean, I do eventually learn from my mistakes, but I have to make a lot of mistakes before the news sinks in. He's also curious if I've checked into SCP law yet. So this is Secure, Contain, Protect. It's a sort of internet paranormal investigation thing. I've been watching a couple of SCP videos. There's a lot of good stuff on there on YouTube. The Dust series in particular. If you just Google Dust on YouTube, there are hundreds of very, very professionally made fan videos about all kinds of creepy stuff. They're very, very good videos and definitely worth watching. Helix Folks says, Hey boss, you're looking forward to Stalker 2 when it comes out in September? I am. I'm hoping it doesn't slip. I'm kind of getting this Stalker vibe from Pacific Drive. So I've featured 1 or 2 videos on that. There's going to be more to come. It's kind of like My Summer Car crossed with Subnautica and Stalker, Shadows of Chernobyl. It's a really, really good game, and it's not quite as scary as I thought it was going to be, so I'm managing to play through it. But yeah, I don't want to do any spoilers on that one because there will be videos coming out. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to Stalker 2. I played Metro Exodus as well, a very similar kind of game. And it was alright, but I think I prefer the vibe of the Stalker series. Next question from Yamatog2. Almighty Overlord Jingles, in your Robocop series, you've expressed your love for Paul Verhoeven's English sci-fi satire. See that? I pronounced his name properly this time. I keep calling him Verhoeven when it's Dutch. It should be Verhoeven. His English science fiction satire movies like Robocop, Starship Troopers and Total Recall. Have you ever seen his other movies, particularly his Dutch ones? I have. And he gives me a few examples. Turkish Delight. Yes, I've seen that. Soldier of Orange, yes, I've seen that. These were both starring Rutger Hauer, who played Roy Batty in Blade Runner, and Black Book, starring Carice van Houten, who was the Red Witch, Melisandre, in Game of Thrones. And yes, I've seen that as well. It is an amazing World War II history movie. She plays a Dutch Jewish girl who's hiding from the Nazis and dyes her hair blonde so she can pass as not Jewish, and ends up working for the Dutch resistance. Basically, kind of like a honey trap deal, where she seduces a Nazi officer in order to get information from him. And he turns out to be not an absolutely terrible guy, and she's conflicted and so on and so on. And it's a very, very good movie. I don't want to say any more in case you watch it, but I definitely recommend it. The first one that he mentioned there, Turkish Delight, very old, hasn't aged well. Soldier of Orange isn't bad, but Black Book is incredibly good. So if you do like Paul Verhoeven, although none of these movies are anything like the stuff he's famous for, like Robocop, Starship Troopers and Total Recall, but they are very good movies. He's a great director. Anyway, next one from Did Nothing To. Hey Jingles, yesterday someone brought to my attention that there are apparently Star Trek books and merch where the human characters have been redrawn as cats. Oh dear. Have you ever heard or seen anything about this? And if so, what do you think about it? I mean, that depends. No, I haven't heard or seen anything about this. But it kind of depends. I mean, if they've redrawn them as cats, actual cats, that would be quite cute and amusing, I suppose. But if we're talking furries, right? Okay, so, yeah. No, too weird. Okay, anyway. Tank 50 US, on with the next question. He's got a multi-part question here. If a developer were to make a digital combat simulator, so DCS World, style game set in the Star Wars universe, where every switch, button, knob, etc. was modelled and you had to learn every procedure from starting the unit up to ejecting, would you give it a shot? I'd be tempted. See, my problem with DCS World is it's just too complicated. Actually, I have a couple of problems with DCS World. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you're into flight sims, there's just no substitute. DCS World is the best, and it's also free. The base game's free on Steam. And it comes with 2 free modules, I think, which is the P-51 Mustang and some Russian ground attack jet whose name escapes me. I think it's a Sukhoi SU-25, possibly. Anyway, you get those for free, and then you buy other aircraft as DLC. But Star Wars, well, I might, you know. The problem, of course, is it's got a brick wall difficulty curve. It's very... Actually, well, I said there was 2 problems. The one is the brick wall difficulty curve, and the other is the fact that you don't really want to be playing it with mouse and keyboard. And I don't really have enough desktop real estate for... Well, for example, I've got a flight yoke, I've got a joystick and throttle, I've got a separate throttle unit for playing like Microsoft Flight Simulator, but it takes up the whole desk and there's no space for my keyboard. So you're either playing flight simulators or you're using the PC. You can't do both. Certainly not with my desktop arrangement, so that's a bit of an issue. The second part of his question was, since the existing DCS World is technically free to play, which 2 units would you give the player base for free to give at least some capability, and why? He says he'd go with an ARM T16 Skyhopper and the Z95 Headhunter. The reason, because the T16 is an excellent trainer from the setting, and the Z95 can technically be used by both sides in the Galactic Civil War. The Empire used them for a while, And there were some units that held out for a while, and the Rebels used them for a bit. Sorry, the Rebels used them for a bit until they got their hands on the T-65 Incom X-Wing. Yeah, I'd say probably the Z-95. I'm using the American. The Z-95, sorry, they're the Headhunter, because the Rebels did use them as trainers for the X-Wings. So that would be a good one to give away for free. Get you used to the sort of X-Wing-ish flight model. And the T-16 Skyhopper. I think... because the T-16 isn't a starfighter. It's a skyhopper. It flies around in atmosphere. It's like a snow speeder. It's an air speeder. That's the word I was looking for. And DCS, close air support, flying over the ground and all that sort of thing. So you could model Tatooine or something and do Beggar's Canyon and the Dune Sea and so on and so on. And because they did that, by the way, in Microsoft Flight Simulator. They've done tie-in with Dune. And there's an Arrakis map that you can fly around in, an ornithopter. So, that sort of thing, there's definitely an audience for it. I'm not sure if I'd go with the Skyhopper, though. I can see why you would do it, because it's an air speeder, and, DCS world, key word there being world, so you're flying around a world, rather than in space. So, you've really thought about that one quite well, actually. Maybe, the T-16 and the Z-95 Headhunter. Because you don't want anything too advanced. You want to sell people the advanced stuff, like the TIE fighters and the TIE interceptors and the X-Wings and the B-Wings and the A-Wings. So, that seems like a good choice. He also hopes that the crab is still small enough it can be bullseyed like a Womp-Rat. Yeah, thank you. You and me both. Okay, moving on to the next question. This one from Bearcat Racing. G'day, Jingles. Bear said meowdy. Bear's his cat. Mum asked, where is the nude Christmas... His mother asked, where is the nude Christmas calendar and bathwater you promised to send her? Don't cancel the check, it's in the post, I promise. Secondly, if the salt miners invented a time machine, but you can only go back in time into a cave 80,000 years ago, what are you drawing on the wall to absolutely mindfuck with the people that discover the cave in the present day? He also says, I always thought tainted love would be a funny tattoo to get down on your taint. Just an idea. Good luck from Australia. For anybody who's wondering what your taint is, it's the bit between your arse and your bollocks. Because it taint your arse and it taint your bollocks. So, anyway, what would you put into a cave 80,000 years ago? What would you draw on the cave wall to screw around with archaeologists who discover the cave in the present day? I can think of a number of things, but none of them are suitable for YouTube. I'd probably just paint on the wall, you shouldn't be here. That was something that, does anybody remember the original Duke Nukem 3D by 3D Realms way back in the early 90s? Because there were all kinds of different hacks and cheats that you could type in, including the no-clip cheat, where you basically just could fly around and travel through the scenery and so on and so on. And there was one of the level designers, I don't know his real name, he was just known as Level Lord, working on Duke Nukem 3D. There was one level in the game where as you're wandering around, if you looked, you passed this cliff, and if you looked up, you could see a cave in the top of the cliff. Cliff. And if you're any kind of gamer, that's a challenge. How do I get to that cliff? And I must have spent an hour on that level trying to figure out a way of climbing up the cliff face wall. And I just couldn't figure out. So eventually I gave up, and I used the no-clip cheat and flew up the cliff to get into the cave. And inside the cave, there was nothing except on the wall. It just said, you shouldn't be here. Signed, Level Lord. So... because he knew what was going to happen if you put a cave up the cliff that you couldn't get into. Actually, somebody was going to find a way to cheat to get up there, and he left that message there for them. So I would do that. I would leave a message on the wall saying you shouldn't be here. Next question comes from Mongo. Jingles, my thoughts and prayers go with you. You can beat the cancer. If you need anything, just say the word. And us salt miners will more than likely move heaven and earth to get it done. You know what? Thank you. And you're probably right. Because, I mean, as I keep stressing to everybody, I feel fine. If the worst comes to the worst, I'm pretty sure it's been caught early enough that it will be treatable. And if not, well, just lucky, I guess. Thank you anyway. Next question comes from Yalara. Hello, my dearest Uncle Jingles. First and foremost, I wish you from the deepest of my heart a full recovery for your health situation. Thank you again. Moving on to a lighter subject, what's your status with Baldur's Gate 3? Will you eventually do a video series where we can all have a fun time, just like in the good old days of Subnautica? I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't finished the story. On my part, it took me more than 400 hours before I could watch the end credits. Right. Actually, I have a confession to make. I uninstalled it a couple of days ago, mostly because I'm doing a lot of recordings of Classified France 44, Pacific Drive. Oh, what's the other thing I'm playing? Oh yeah, no, I'm done. Actually, I'm done with the RoboCop recordings. I've finished the game, and I just need to get what I have recorded done into videos. But I'm running out of disk space, and I wasn't really playing Baldur's Gate 3 because it's the kind of game, as you noted, you spent 400 hours in it before you got to the end. It's not the kind of game you can just casually pick up and play. It's very much you need to concentrate. You need to understand the mechanics and the various different special ability and spell and special attack mechanics. And if you, it's one of those games. I don't know if you've ever played a game where you have a go and you think, oh, this is pretty good, and then attention span of a mayfly. You think, oh, shiny object over there, and then you leave that game for a couple of weeks or a month, and then you come back and you've forgotten how to play it. It's like shit. Where's the tutorial when I need it? I'm kind of like that with Baldur's Gate 3. It is an amazing game, but I just don't have the time to dedicate to the game that it deserves. So I still own it, but I've had to uninstall it in order to make space for video files, for stuff that I'm going to turn into videos on YouTube. I'll get around to it at some point. I imagine probably at Christmas, when I have a 2-week uninterrupted time off. That's the kind of opportunity that you need to set aside to play something like Baldur's Gate 3. And that's probably when I'll get back around to it. But I mean, the game isn't going anywhere. It's going to be just as good 10 months from now as it is today. So I'm not too worried about it. Sir Blake says, in the last Q&A, I asked if you could maybe tell some old Navy naffy story about Eddie. And have you heard about Storygraph? I have not. Oh, apparently it's an app to keep track of the books you've read. Make it easy to give us book recommendations. For example, I've read Churchill's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare because you recommended it. But they're doing a movie, by the way, although it's not technically about the book. Henry Cavill, Alan Richardson. It's been directed by Guy Ritchie. I'm going to need to Google this. And I'm fairly sure that they are doing Henry Cavill. Here we go. Yes. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. It's coming out soon-ish. And it's kind of based on the sort of operations that they conducted. Starring Henry Cavill and Aaron Richardson and a whole bunch of other people. And I'm sure it's going to be really, really good. Because it's Henry Cavill and he's awesome. And I really like Alan Richardson as well. For anybody who's thinking, who the hell's Alan Richardson? He was in the Teen Titans TV show. And also Reacher. The Alan Reacher series. Not the movies, that's Tom Cruise. The TV show where he actually looks and acts like the Jack Reacher from the books. So, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that. I haven't been to the movies in ages because I used to go to the movies with Eddie. And he's not around, so I just don't go to the movies anymore. In fact, I think the last time I went to the movies was with Eddie. I miss him, Such a good friend. Anyway, yeah, thank you. Old Navy, I'll have to have a good think about that question. And the question about an Old Navy story about Eddie. Because we've kind of told all of the stories. And it's not so much that I can't think of any stories about Eddie, it's just I can't, off the top of my head, think of any that we haven't already told you about, where we're sitting on the couch shooting the shit doing an episode of Mingles with Jingles. So I'll have a good think about that, and hopefully, if something pops into my head before the end of this video, I'll blurt it out. So thank you, Sir Blake, for the questions. Zoe with the next question. Jingles, I hope you're as okay as possible, all things considered. I am, thank you. I just wanted to thank you for the years of entertainment you provided me. I remember watching back in the days of Bohemian Eagle, the T150 being the mortal enemy of the TOG and the Bandicam logo. Yeah, my early videos. You got through a lot of tough times, including high school and now I'm in university. You still bring me that same joy in the short break from life's troubles to this day, and I wish now more than ever I could repay that debt. Sobbiness aside, my question is, what series do you miss doing? The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, or the short-lived but much-loved Wanker of the Week? I've received so many messages like this week. It's incredible how many of you have been following me on YouTube for so long. Some of you were in school when you first started watching my videos, and now you've got kids of your own. But anyway, what series do I miss doing? I don't miss doing the good, the bad, and the ugly because they are hard work. I mean, it's not just the editing, but it's the getting all of the material, because you need to put together a video like that. People don't appreciate. I mean, when you see people doing compilation videos, like that on YouTube, you think, oh, that was great. But you do not appreciate how much work is involved in doing that. And not just the editing. And my editing isn't great. There are people that do way, way better video editing than me. But even with my rudimentary level of video editing, it takes about 6 hours just to stitch one of those videos together. And that is nothing compared to the amount of battles that you have to watch. A minimum of 20, and they all need to be good in order to get the raw material for that kind of video. So the amount of effort that goes into doing one of those, the good, the bad, and the ugly videos, is just ridiculous. So I don't miss doing them at all. The Wanker of the Week, though, I think that was a segment I used to do. Was it in Mingles with Jingles? I think so. We'd have a short video segment where I would do like there's a TV show, probably still is for all I know. I don't know. I don't watch, regular TV anymore. Here in Britain, called Top of the Pops, where they would run down the top 40 music charts, and then like every 7 or 8 numbers, they would actually play one of the songs until they got to number 1. And I used to use the countdown music as they were going through the charts from Top of the Pops for Wanker of the Week. And like coming in at number 3, we have this guy, blah, blah, blah. And today's number 1 in Wanker of the Week is basically just people being complete dicks in World of Tanks. And that was reasonably fast to put together. And it was funny, and I enjoyed it, and a lot of you enjoyed it as well. But the reason I stopped doing it was because I wanted to try to get away from the negativity of just pointing out people being twats to each other. Even though I did it in a sort of light-hearted and funny way, there was a point where I was like, you know what, let's focus on the good things about World of Tanks and the player base and so on and so on, instead of just focusing on the negativity all the time. And that's the reason why I eventually stopped doing Wanker of the Week. Also, I was getting copyright struck for the music. So there was that. Next question comes from Bully. Looks a bit Dutch, I'm not entirely sure. Says, good morning, Jingles. During your time in the Navy, did you have any interactions with research and or hydrographic survey ships? I didn't know. I mean, I saw them. Sometimes they'd be docked in Portsmouth at the same time as I was. But I never, ever did any kind of exercise, because the hydrographic survey is a very, very small branch in the Royal Navy. And they just sail around charting the seas, updating Admiralty maps. So they do a very, very important job, but they're a tiny, tiny branch. It's not like the Seaman branch or the Warfare branch or the Supply branch or the Hydrographic Survey branch. I think there might just be like 40 of them in total across the entire Navy, and they all serve on like 1 or 2 hydrographic survey ships. I don't even know how many we've got. That's how little I actually know about it. But no, unfortunately, I never did get to come across any of them, because they tend to serve on those ships because they're no good anywhere else. You can't take a hydrographic survey rating and stick it in the operations room of a Type 42 destroyer. Wouldn't have the faintest idea what he was doing. He couldn't do his job on board anything other than a hydrographic survey ship. So they're very much a branch of the Navy that keeps itself to itself. Next question from Soggy Sow. Hello, Jingles. Have you tried Helldivers 2? It's certainly a game that would be right up your alley. It looks incredible. I've been watching videos and streams of people playing. It looks hilarious, but it's it's one of those games that came out of pretty much nowhere and just had massive success, because the original Helldivers was a sort of top-down, third-person, sort of isometric, not quite a Command and Conquer style game. You get the idea. It wasn't a third-person sort of open-world shooter the way Helldivers 2 is. And I found there's a lot of similarities, and it's weird because it indicates just how close the boundary is between crap and awesome. Because if you sit down and take a step back and you look at it, Helldivers 2 is very, very similar to Skull and Bones. I know the settings are completely different. Helldivers 2 is obviously heavily influenced by Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers movie. They've got that sense of humour with the whole, the fascist society, and anyway, you get the idea. If you've watched the intro to Helldivers 2, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's basically Starship Troopers. So if you're going to rip something off, rip off the best. So there's that. But the actual gameplay, where you're running around in co-op and just mowing down waves of enemies, and it's a better Starship Troopers game than the Starship Troopers game, even though it isn't Starship Troopers. And you've got all of these different objectives, and you go around in a squad of 4 or 3, or however many friends you have, working together to beat these objectives, and blah blah, and so on and so on. And then you look at Skull and Bones, and Skull and Bones is another game that basically sucks if you're playing by yourself. You really need to play with other people, which is always, I thought, a kind of danger sign, because it's easy to have fun playing with your friends. The challenge is making something fun for single player, because that actually requires effort, scripting, and talent, and imagination. It's often why you see a lot of these like indie games that come out on Steam that don't have any, the indie shooters that come out on Steam, that have very, very little or no single player capability, because that's expensive to do. It's relatively easy to just design a map, something like the reason why Counter-Strike is so successful, because it's the players who make the content. You just design the map, you let them loose, give them some weapons, give them some equipment upgrades, and let them crack on. That's relatively easy to do. Designing single-player content, that takes time, and it takes money, and it takes talent. Not that I'm saying that just hacks just toss out these multiplayer games. There's something like BattleBit. There are all kinds of stuff out there that are very, very good, and obviously they require skill and talent to produce as well. But it's easier than doing something equally good for single player. So you've got Helldivers 2, which is great, but absolutely sucks unless you're playing with your friends. And then you've got Skull and Bones 2, which is, I don't want to say great, but it's not, the gameplay loop isn't that different to Helldivers, but it absolutely sucks if you're playing alone. You really do need to be playing with your friends. The primary difference between the two games, and the reason why Helldivers 2 gets a pass and Skull and Bones doesn't, is Helldivers 2 only costs about 35 quid. Nobody's asking $70 for Helldivers 2. Meanwhile, Skull and Bones doesn't really offer that much of a different gameplay experience, although it certainly looks less immediately enjoyable than Helldivers 2, but they're asking double the price. And season passes, in-game shop, cosmetic store, and so on, and so on. Yeah. So Helldivers 2 gets a thumbs up. Don't know if I'll be playing it though, because, well, it kind of sucks if you're playing by yourself, and I think Rita's got it. I don't know, maybe. But again, the whole issue is I've got so much stuff on the go. The thing that originally turned me off from it was, who am I going to play it with? But I think Rita has it now. I know she's been playing Kill the Justice League, she's been playing Skull and Bones. Kill the Justice League is another example of exactly the same sort of thing. It's a game that's not that great, but if you play it with friends, that's where the fun comes from, because it's just relatively easy to let players crack on in co-op or PvP and just let them make their own entertainment rather than having to script and design the entertainment for them. So I don't know, maybe we'll see. But But my major issue at the moment is I've just got so much other stuff that I don't really have the time to dedicate to something like Helldivers 2. Even though I do think it looks amazing, and it does certainly look like a lot of fun. Wow. Forgot how to speak English. Got a couple of points halfway through that one. Anyway, Grim of the Plains. Salutations, Jingles. Do you plan on making a series out of the Boat Crew game just recently? Sorry, Boat Crew game you just recently uploaded? I like the previous indie game you showcased, Arms Trade Tycoon Tanks. Yep, and I'd love to see playthroughs of both of them. Your commentary on the history of it all is very entertaining. Always brings me back to the one-off games you do. But really fun to have a whole series indeed. Again, basically the same answer. I would like to. It was a good little game, just like Arms Trade Tycoon. I mean, two very different styles of games, both, I believe, published by Microprose. But I've just got so much other stuff going on that I don't really have the time. Although it's, you see, having games, little games like this, that I could go back and make a video series on, they're nice to kind of have in your back pocket for when you run out of other stuff to do. Because at some point, I mean, the Robocop series is almost done, and then I need to do Pacific Drive. Then I'm probably going to be doing Classified France 44, and I still have System Shock as well. It's another one of those games that you kind of keep in your back pocket for when you run out of other stuff. You can always go and do a video on System Shock, or Boat Crew, or Arms Trade Tycoon. Because they're there, you've got them, and people enjoy the content. So they're nice to keep aside for a rainy day if you don't have time to do it right now. So I'm not going to say no, I'm never going to do a video series on them, but if things start running dry, don't be surprised if you see a video on Boat Crew, Arms Trade Tycoon, or I finally get around to doing what I threatened to do months ago, and continuing with System Shock. Next question comes from Thick as Frick 1. Hello, our great and mighty overlord. First of all, yes, my recorder is refrigerating. Second, happy early birthday. Oh, that's right, yeah, it's March. What's today's date? The 3rd. We're recording this on the 3rd. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see it on the 4th. My birthday's on the 10th. I've totally forgotten. Hopefully Rita hasn't totally forgotten. We shall see. Normally she cooks me something on my birthday. Yeah, March the 10th. The same birthday as Chuck Norris and Osama bin Laden. So, one of which is still alive. Chuck Norris is still alive, isn't he? I hope so. Anyway, yeah. And also Prince Edward, apparently, but nobody's ever heard of him, so whatever. I don't have anything planned. Probably a colonoscopy. Wouldn't that be great, wouldn't it? If I get the letter from the hospital saying your colonoscopy's been booked, it's on my bloody birthday. What day is March the 10th? Let's see. Oh no, it's unlikely. It's a Sunday, so I'm probably alright. I might get to actually enjoy my birthday this year. Anyway, what was the most underwhelming moment for you in the Navy? Something you were excited for, but was just really lame. That was the actual point of the question. I would have to say the first Gulf War. Was it? I'm trying to remember when it was. I suppose it was 1991. Yes, because I joined the Navy in 89, in like November. I was in basic training through to early 90, and then I went to HMS Mercury, the communication school, for 6 months radio operator training. And then I joined my first ship, HMS Brazen, out in the Gulf when it was doing pre-Gulf War stuff, and then the war itself kicked off in like January, February 91. So we had a good couple of months of build-up for this war. And I think Bill Hicks, I don't know if you ever heard the comedian Bill Hicks, I think he summed up the whole first Gulf War best. Trying to remember the routine he did. It went something along the lines of, they were because they were always hyping up the Iraqi Republican Guard. We're doing really well, but we have yet to face the elite Iraqi Republican Guard. And then, after a couple more days of carpet bombing and not one peep from this Republican Guard, they went from being the elite Iraqi Republican Guard to just the Republican Guard to the Republicans made up this shit about there being any guards out there. We hope you enjoyed the fireworks show. And that was kind of like what the Gulf War was for me, because there's this whole build-up to it. And then the air war kicked off, and then the ground war kicked off, and it was just same shit, different day. It was dull as dishwater. We were just in Defence Watchers for like 6 months. Defence Watchers, by the way, is when your ship works a 1 in 2 shift system. So half of the ship are up and working for 8 hours, while the other half are asleep. And then you swap. And then you swap. And then you swap. And you do that for 6 months. That was my Gulf. Aside from there was a video in the operations room where they interviewed me about the one time the Iraqi Air Force came out to play. And a couple of, I don't know what they were, a couple of MiGs, MiG-29s, whatever, came out to conduct a missile attack on the hospital ship. They came out to do missile attacks on everything, but the one that we were concerned about was the hospital ship. I think it was the Royal Fleet Auxiliary Argus. And HMS London was the guard ship. She was the flagship of the British task force out there, and she was the guard ship for the Argus, but she picked that one day to go a little bit further up north and operate with the two Type 42 destroyers who were actually doing the fighting. We were just doing merchantman escort, we called it the Combat Fruit and Veg Patrol. Boring as hell. So we came up to take over guarding the hospital ship for the London on the day that the Iraqis decided they were going to try to, amongst other things, sink this hospital ship. So a couple of MiGs got to within 2 minutes of missile launch range, and a pair of Saudi Arabian F-15s shot one of them down. The other one thought, screw that, dropped his weapons and ran for home. That was it. That was 15 minutes of excitement in a 6 month, 8 hours on, 8 hours off, 8 hours on, 8 hours off. So, what should have been an epoch-defining moment in my life, just fresh out of training and straight off to an actual shooting war, was the most dull and boring and just soul-destroyingly experience, without one exception of that 15 minutes. It was like, so this is war, is it? I have to admit, if you're going to go to war, you want that war to be as boring as possible, because exciting wars are not fun. So I shouldn't really be complaining too much. But yeah, the most underwhelming experience that I have ever had in the Navy was the entirety, with the exception of that 15-minute period of brief excitement, the entirety of the first Gulf War. And on that note, I think we're going to end it here. My apologies, Snazzy. I do not have time to get around to your... Oh, I'm sorry. I was just reading the question. Well, you know what? We'll finish with Snazzy's question. He says, I was wondering what you think of the Pacific series. At first I thought he was talking about the Pacific Drive video game. But he says, I remember you mentioned that you did like it, but a lot of people view it harshly compared to Band of Brothers, whereas I think it's genuinely equal, especially the music. I really like the Pacific, because unlike Band of Brothers, which was based on the late historian Stephen Ambrose's book, Band of Brothers, the Pacific was based on 2 books by, and I keep forgetting their names. One of them was Helmet for My Pillow by Robert Leckie. There we go, I remember his name. And the other was With the Old Breed by Eugene Sledge. And the Pacific focused on both of those characters and then combined their stories into one show. And I really liked it. I thought there were some great moments in it. I particularly like the part where they're on the firing range, zeroing their weapons, and an officer with his finger on the trigger swings his weapon around to talk to the drill sergeant, who immediately smacks him to the ground, stamps on his head, and rips the weapon out of his hands and gives him the tongue lashing of a lifetime. And the second lieutenant turns around to the captain and says, "Are you going to let him talk to me like that, sir?" And the captain just says, "Gunny's right." There's full of moments like that, which you obviously knew were real and actually happened, and were taken directly from the book. I think I do prefer Band of Brothers, because the cast in I'm not saying the cast in the Pacific was bad at all. There was one breakout star in it though. I can't remember the name of the Marine that he played. It was a real person, and I'm struggling to remember the name of the actor. But he was the star of Mr. Robot, and he played Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to point out what this guy's name was. I can picture him perfectly. I think he's a great actor. But that was where he got his break. The role that he played in the Pacific, that's what sort of propelled him into bigger and better things. And I do like the Pacific, and I definitely recommend it. But like HBO were running into sort of diminishing returns, because they'd had a massive success with Band of Brothers, and then Hanks and Spielberg realised they could screw them for more money to do a follow-up, which was the Pacific. So HBO basically lost money on the Pacific because it didn't do as well, and it cost them twice as much as Band of Brothers did. So yeah, But it's definitely worth watching. You can probably watch it for free these days because it's been around for so long. Just don't expect it to be as good as Band of Brothers. But not being quite as good as Band of Brothers is not a bad thing. It's still excellent and definitely worth watching. And on that note, that's it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. Thank you to everybody who turned up for the live Q&A. And thank you once again for everybody's messages of support. It really has been overwhelming, but in a good way. And hopefully we'll have some news in next week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. But if we don't, we don't. I mean, that's the thing. I'm just waiting for the result. Well, I'm not just waiting for the results of tests. I'm waiting to have the tests done in the first place. So once I know what's what, I'll be sure to let you all know. Thank you all for turning up. If you're watching this as Mingles with Jingles on Monday, hope you've all had a great weekend. And as always, take care. And I'll catch you next time.